Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Daily Elevation. I'm your host, Fred Rawls, coming from Western Kentucky, here in Paducah. Today's topic, this is of Daily Elevation. We're going to be talking. Now, I didn't say this at first on the beginning of these programs, but there's 7 Noahide laws, and I've already went through 5. Today is the 6th Noahide Law, which is a category, it's not just a law, it's a category of a law. And today is number 6, and this law has to do with cruelty to animals, or the prohibition of eating a limb from a living animal. What does that mean? That you must make sure that the animal is deceased before using it for consumption of food. Just like we have, like in America, you can't just take an animal, cut off a leg or something like that and leave it there just to die. That's cruelty to the animal. And we see that there's a lot of things in the Torah that has to talk about cruelty to animals. And that we as humans need to have more respect for the creatures that Hashem has created. And yes, he has granted us opportunity to eat them for food, but there's a proper way to do these things. This way, in the Jewish culture, the animals are kosher because a lot of their slaughterhouses, when they slaughter the animals, they do it with the less pain as possible. So, for example, when a lot of people like to go hunting for animals, deer and elk or whatever it is. It's fine if you do it if it's going to be done for food, but just to do it just for game, that's what we're talking about. That's actually a sin. That's a punishment by Hashem for those who do such things, because those animals can be used the proper way. Like so many people back in the days. So a couple hundred years ago, we used the animals' hide for clothing and for shoes and for purses and wallets and things of that nature. But also they would use the meat for food. So it was like a commodity, like we have in our stores today. The butchers that we have today, they kill the animal first before they do that. And that's what we're talking about. You can't just take an animal and just cut a limb off of it, cut a leg off of it, or do something to it and just eat it. That's cruelty to the animal. So this is chapter 8 of the Brit Shalom. Chapter 8, the Brit Shalom. And this has to do with animals, the prohibition of eating a limb from a living animal. Okay, the verses for today are, and as for me, I will establish my covenant with you and with every descendant after you, and with every living soul that is with you, of the bird, of the cattle, and of every living animal upon the earth with you. This is Genesis 9 through 10, and it's Hashem speaking to Noah. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. As with the green herbs have I given you all these. However, you shall not eat flesh whose blood is in its soul. Genesis 3 through 4. Now that's him talking to Adam. On that day I will make a covenant with the beasts of the field and the birds of the air and the creeping things of the ground. I will also banish bow, sword, and war from the land. Thus I will let them lie down safely. Hosea 2:20. Those are the verses for today from this chapter. Okay. The Torah permitted humans to feed themselves with every type of plant life. As is stated, God said, behold, I have given you every seed-bearing plant that is upon the surface of the entire earth, and every tree which has seed-bearing fruit, it shall be yours for food. And humans were also permitted to eat many types of animals, as it is stated, and the fear and the dread of all of you shall be upon every animal of the earth, upon every bird of the sky, and of all that moves upon the ground, and of all fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. As the green herbs have I given you all these. The Torah prohibited eating limb from a living animal, or in other words, any part of any animal that was taken from it while it was still alive, as it states. However, you shall not eat flesh whose blood is still in it. This prohibition applies even after the animal whose flesh was detached while it was still alive has died. So this is the biggest point of this is making sure that this is talk I'm talking to people who, there's a lot of times where I've seen that in past history, or I've seen some programs before where people would take like a monkey, for example, and they would put its head in the top of a table, and just its head would be up there, and they would take these little hammers and they would whack this monkey on top of his head while it's still alive, and then once it's dead, they eat the brains of the monkey. And this is what we're talking about, doing something wicked like that. Can you imagine? I mean, that's the pain and suffering that, they used to even do humans that way. When cannibalism, they used to do wicked things like that. But this is what we're talking about, where they take an animal and they cause so much suffering before they eat the animal, just to get to the brains, and then they would discard the rest of the animal. That's what this is talking about. This is a great prohibition. Among the reasons why eating flesh from an animal is forbidden is to distance humanity from brutality, pursuit of lustful pleasures, and impulsivity. That's why when people slaughter an animal, they seethe the blood out of the animal first to make it real, because the Torah says there's life in the blood. That means whatever's in the blood could be something, actually could be something bad in the blood. A virus is living or some kind of disease is living. So the best way to do the animal is to seize the blood from the animal. That way, there's no blood in it. That's what he's talking about. To make sure we're not going to be like the animal. We're not going to. We're going to have kindness or some kind of humanity towards this animal. It is forbidden to eat a limb from a living animal, but it is permissible to make use of it, for example, as food for dogs. That means now what he's talking about is animals. An animal kingdom is exempt from this. Why? Because they don't have the means, or they only have an understanding of what this means. So the prohibition of eating a limb from a living animal pertains to birds as well. However, in this case, violation of the prohibition does not result in any punishment. I would say that, like the killing of like a chicken or a bird or fowl, which chicken is the most common bird, or a turkey. What they used to do back in the day, it was kind of horrific to see, was they would take an axe, take an axe and put this old chicken on an anvil or something, and they whack his head off, and then he'd fly all over the place. To me, I was thinking like, yes, it probably ended his life quick, but then he's flopping over the world. So it seemed like that was a cruel act. Maybe there was a better and easier way to do it. Like in the Philippines, they didn't do it like that. In the Philippines, they would take a chicken, they would cut its throat, and they save the blood from the animal, and it would die. It seemed like a more natural death than just chopping the head off and it goes flopping everywhere. An animal or a bird that is still convulsing even after it has been slaughtered is still considered alive, as long as it has not ceased all movement. That's what I'm talking about. Eventually, the chicken did die, but after you do that, I mean, the body's still alive. I mean, I guess that's how it happens. I guess muscles and things are contracting and reacting. Hey, something's happened. If the head of an animal is removed, it is permissible to eat the animal even if it is still convulsing. Okay. The prohibition applies to any quantity of flesh that is eaten. Hard tendons and skin from domesticated and wild animals, bird feathers, horns, and hooves are not included in the prohibition of eating a lamb from a living animal, because it is not customary for humans to eat them. But the skin of a pig and all other soft animal skins taken while the animal is still alive, since they are customarily eaten, are forbidden for consumption. The prohibition does not apply to insects, fish, or grasshoppers, that is, and cold-blooded animals whose blood is not considered separate from its flesh. And even though it is permitted to eat them while they are alive, it is preferable to kill them first in order not to cause them suffer. It is permissible to clean the wound of another person by sucking blood from the wound, like a snake bite. Medications that contain components that include flesh taken from a living animal are permissible. Food in which a limb taken from a living animal is mixed uniformly throughout the food, as long as it is minority of this mixture, is permissible to eat. I think that has to do a lot with meat that is processed. Sometimes they'll mix pork and beef and chicken all in the same blend. That's what it's talking about. Food in which a limb taken from oh no. In case where there is doubt as to whether a particular food is in fact a limb taken from a living animal, we assume that it is permissible since most of the food that we eat is not taken from a living animal. However, it is forbidden to cause animal suffering without any possible positive purpose or without any direct benefit to human beings. Because, like I said, game hunting, like when someone goes out and shoots an animal just so they can get a picture and they leave the animal to die, that's what he's talking about. That's punishment, even though it's not punished by us. It's a cruel act, and a lot of people are punished because of that. Because we see even in the news today that when some people take upon themselves to have different kind of animals for pets, like horses or dogs or cats or whatever, and they end up not able to afford them, so they don't take care of them, and the animals don't have a proper means to escape or get away, and they stay there and they starve to death, or they starve and they're inhumane, they're treated poorly, and they're beaten, and or sometimes they use them for game, like for fighting. And see, this is really what it's really talking about. The cruelty to animals. Basically, this is what I know. It says we shouldn't eat from a living animal. But this has to do with cruelty to animals in the most specific way. So that's what it's talking about. Yes, food is for one thing, but to me, in the greater sense of this commandment, is how that we treat God's creatures, His animals, and that we just don't do it just for game, just for fun. That's what this is really talking about. It is forbidden to eat human flesh. It's called cannibalism. Where human life is in danger, it is permissible to eat every food that the Torah forbids. So that means even if you're Jewish or you eat kosher food, and the only thing that you got to eat is a pork sandwich because that's what you're providing just to save your life, it is permissible. All parts of the body of an animal are permissible after its death, including the intestines. That's like we see a lot of people, like us, when someone makes sausage, 9 times out of 10, when you see collagen on the back of the package, that is talking about the intestine of a cow or a pig or whatever it is. So that's what it's talking about. When someone makes a sausage or something like that, that's what they use, is usually an intestine. The sages of Israel were divided regarding the status of blood from a living animal, that is, blood taken from an animal that is still alive. Practically speaking, it is permitted, but blessings will come to those who are stringent in this matter. And it is appropriate to refrain from eating blood even from an animal that was already slaughtered. No hides are not obligated to eat, only those animals that are ritually slaughtered. Nevertheless, it is best to make every effort to minimize suffering of the animal. Therefore, it is best for a meat eater to eat animals that have been properly slaughtered. It is best to avoid cruelty towards any living animal or living creature, and one should not make them suffer and should have mercy on them. Included in this behavior are not to slaughter an animal and its offspring on the same day, not to do any work such as plowing with animals of two different species, like a ox or a mule. Those two, to do something like that, which one is stronger than the other, the unequal yoke. Sometimes we see that common sense sounds like one would drag the other, or one will be able to work as much as the other. Not to muzzle to prevent it from eating agriculture produce associated with its work. Threshing. So that means if you're plowing the field, you're not allowed to muzzle the horse or the cow because while he's working, he needs to eat. He needs to be able to eat the food. The sages were uncomfortable with the idea of using animals for game or sport because they suffer from such activities, such as in bullfights and hunting for sport. Whoever finds a nest and wants to take the chicks or the eggs that are in it must first chase away the mother and then take them in order that the mother should not see her offspring be taken away. But it is better not to take them. Now, we know that when it comes to chickens and hens, which is what most people eat today, yeah, I guess it's the same way in that also. But the chicken has not mated with the rooster. No eggs don't is not really the chick is not in the egg. But we're talking like so even in that aspect, it makes you wonder if it's you got to be kind to the chicken even also that you shoo the chicken away before you take the eggs. It is proper to eat meat or drink wine in excess. No, no. It is not proper to eat meat or drink wine in excess. That means to be a glutton. But it is proper to eat enough to where you're sated, where you're full. And that's one good way has to do with when Hashem says, when we go into a land that I'm going to give you, and you eat and you're sated, that means you're full. Don't forget Him. So we should eat enough. In excess is one thing. That's what like eating way too much. Like you get this big old steak and your body says you're full and you keep eating. That's what it's talking about. Blood from a slaughtered undomestic animal or from a slaughtered bird should be covered with earth. Whoever wants to be strict with himself and eat only kosher foods according to the laws of Judaism can do so, and may even accept upon himself a portion of the laws of kashrut. And here are some of these laws. Not to eat trefa, unfit meat, that is, meat from an animal with a fatal defect. That means if the animal was injured or hurt or wounded or whatever has happened to the animal, uh, that's what it's talking about. Not to eat animals or birds that die without being slaughtered by human beings. That means if it was killed by another animal or some kind of disease, if it's dead, this is fine. If it's still laying, you come up on the animal's dead already, you should never mess with that. You shouldn't eat that because you know what? That's disgusting anyway. Not to eat any of the animals forbidden to a Jew as they are listed in the book of Leviticus, which is Leviticus. Let me see if I can't find it. Leviticus 17:13. Yeah, so it says, Leviticus 13, it says, and if any Israelite or a stranger who resides among them hunts down an animal or a bird that may be eaten, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with earth. For the life of all flesh is in its blood. For the life of all flesh, its blood is the life. Therefore, I say unto the Israelite people, you shall not partake of the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is in its blood. And it says right here, let's just keep reading because this is important. This is concerning the Jewish people, but if you're a Noahide and you want to eat kosher or whatever it is, this is the laws concerning that. Part of the law. There's many others, but any person, whether citizen or stranger, who eats what has died or has been torn by beasts shall wash his clothes, bathe in water, and remain unclean until the evening. Then he shall be clean. But if he does not wash his clothes and bathe his body, he shall bear his guilt. So he's talking like, so if you do eat something like that, there's things that you have to do to cleanse yourself from that iniquity or that infirmity because you ate something that is unclean. So this is a rule concerning the kashrut for the Jewish people. But if you're going to eat that, these are the laws for taking of that. Now, if you want to get more into that, then you have to talk to a rabbi, what's permitted and not permitted, whatever. And not to eat meat mixed with milk or any other dairy products. Now that is for the Jews. Now for us, if we want to eat cheeseburger, that's acceptable. That's no big problem, but it is forbidden for the Jew. But I've learned that sometimes because of the dairy and the meat, sometimes we mix those things together, it can cause a lot of gas, a lot of stomach irritation, whatever it is. But those things are not forbidden for the Noahide. Now, these are the laws concerning these things. Now, I wanted to try to find where it talked about the unclean and unclean animals because that was important. So let me find. I can't find it. But it's talking about the clean and the unclean animals when he's even speaking to Noah when he gets on the ark. So that might be in Genesis 9. So let's look at that. Genesis 9. Right, here it is. This is Genesis 9. We're going to talk about the clean and the unclean. This is important because there's another aspect of this that they didn't mention, but now this is where I just read that verse earlier from 9:9, but I'm gonna read a little bit of Genesis 8 and 9. Genesis 8 and 9. This is where Hashem is telling Noah about the clean and unclean animals. Starting in verse 17 of 8. This is Genesis 8:17, and so on. Every living being that is with you, of all flesh, of birds, of animals, and all moving things that move on the earth, order them out with you, and let them teem on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went forth and his sons and his wife, and his sons and his wife, every living thing, every creeping thing, and every bird, every thing that moves on the earth came out of the ark by their families. And now let's move down to Genesis 9, verses 1. God blessed Noah and his sons, and he said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the land. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every bird of the heavens, and everything that moves on the earth, and in all the fish of the sea. And in your hand they are given. They are given. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you, like the green herbage. I have given you everything, but flesh with its soul and its blood you shall not eat. However, the blood which belongs to your souls I will demand. Of every beast will I demand it, but of a man, of every man, for that of his brother I will demand the soul of man. Okay. That's not what I wanted, really. Anyways, there's a difference between the clean and the unclean animals. That's what I wanted to find. So bear with me just a second because that is important. Let me find it real quick because that's important. Leviticus 11. Leviticus 11. Because even though things are permissible to eat, it's just know the difference between the clean and the unclean. Because there is a distinction. This is Leviticus 11. Hashem spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, These are the creatures that you may eat from among all the animals that are upon the earth. Everything among the animals that has a split hoof, which is completely separate into double hoofs, and that brings up its cud. That one you may eat. But this is what you shall not eat from among those that bring up their cud, or that have split hoofs. The camel, for it brings up its cud, but its hoof is not split. It is unclean to you. And the hyrax, for it brings up its cud, but its hoof is not split. It is unclean to you. And the hare, for it brings up its cud, but its hoof is not split. It is unclean to you. And the pig, for its hoof is split, and its hoof isn't completely separated, but it does not chew its cud. It is unclean to you. You shall not eat of their flesh, nor shall you touch their carcass. They are unclean to you. This may you eat from everything that is in the water, everything that has fins and scales in the water and in the seas and the streams. Those may you eat. So anything that has fins and scales in the water, we know what that is. But as a Noahide, we're permissible to eat those things. But I just want to make a distinguish, especially when people just want to eat everything, that there's clean animals and there's unclean animals. Why? Because animals have a purpose on this earth. Whether you want to believe it or not, they have a purpose. And what they eat, if we eat that animal, we eat what they eat. And sometimes even the foods that we eat, that we're customary eating today, is not the best of foods that we can eat. Now this has to do with, because we're talking about eating a limb from a living animal, so we're talking about food. We're talking about the food that we're going to consume. And we know just because it's clean doesn't mean it's well, because back in the day when animals used to be fed the proper foods, when they eat the proper foods, it's best for you. For cattle, for example, the number one best food it likes to eat is grass. So if you eat the grass, if the cow eats the grass, which is green, and it has all the health benefit that comes from the grass, well, you get the benefit from the cow that eats the grass because you get the nutrients. Now, if you just feed a bunch of junk and stuff, or whatever they feed today, that's another thing. So, and just know that, like for example, in the water, People like to eat the octopus and the squid and the crabs and the crawfish, whatever. Fine, but those are there's things that were made for specific reasons, like the vultures. What do? They eat the carcasses of dead animals. But people, yes, if you want to eat that, you can, but there's always a warning. There's always, yes, you can eat everything, but we have to have some common sense too when we're eating different kind of foods to know that yes, you can eat all the crab that you want, but you know what? What's the number one reason for a crab or a crawfish or whatever it is to clean the filth from the ocean, to clean the filth from the beach, to clean the filth out of everything. Why? Because if they didn't, the place would be filled with disease. So basically, they are the filters of the ocean and of the water, just like a catfish. Yes, it's okay to eat as long as it gets cleaned and it's purified, whatever. But what is it doing? It's eating the filth and the junk and the dead stuff that goes into the water. That's its job. That's what it eats. That's its food. So, anyways, how many people want to eat a vulture after you know it just ate a carcass of a dead skunk or this or that or roadkill? Things to think about. Anyways, that's has to do with the prohibition of eating a limb from living animal, the food that we're going to eat, the prohibitions, and what to do, what to not do. So this is a pretty common sense thing. You know what? Not many people I know that take an animal and just take a hatch and just whack off a leg or something to eat it. Maybe they do. Maybe around the world they do in some foreign countries, but most people have common sense to know what's right and wrong in this situation. So, anyways, that's the prohibitions against animals. But the main thing was cruelty to animals was the main specific thing. Not just to shoot an animal just for game, just take a picture with it, say, hey, look at me, look at what I done. But to make sure that the animal is used in its proper way for food and its hide may be used for clothing or whatever. That's what we're talking about. All right, be blessed and have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.